Tonight you are in for a very special treat as we are joined by, as they have been dubbed, the Paralegal OGs. So we have a collective of paralegals who have been in since the very beginning of when we started allowing initial accessions. And tonight we also have our delightful co-host. Ma'am, take it away.
I'm Airman Tejeda, stationed at Luke, and very happy to be here.
Absolutely, and we are happy to have Airman Tejeda on the show. Going forward, she'll also be doing a handful of episodes. We'll be sharing the responsibilities, so you'll be seeing more of Airman Tejeda. But before we get into the meat and potatoes of our interview, I'd like to take a chance to give our paralegal OGs a chance to introduce themselves. So we'll start with you, Senior McWhirter, and we'll work our way around.
Hello, I am Senior Master Sergeant Robin McWhirter. I'm your Paralegal Assignments Manager. Been in the Air Force about 19 years, kind of the same as all the other OG paralegals. Had numerous assignments all over the Air Force, and I'm actually about to move to AFDW, JA, and DC very shortly. So, yeah, thank you for having me tonight.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here.
Thanks.
Good evening, everybody. I am Senior Master Sergeant Jessica Larsen. I am hailing all the way from 16th Air Force here in JBSA Lackland. I have been a paralegal since November of 2002, and I am actually going to be retiring in December. So happy to be here.
Well, congratulations on your on moving on to greener pastures, and yes, thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon. I'm Senior Jen Jones. I am the 15th Air Force NAF Paralegal Manager over here at Shaw. I've been in 19 years, as the rest of the OG non-priors here. I'm happy to be here and just share a little bit of our story. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right, good evening, everyone. I'm MSgt Seivright from the Air Force Recruiting Service. I consider myself an OG too, even though I've only been in for 16 years, a paralegal the entire time. So just like everybody else here.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being here as well. And again, thanks to each and every one of you, right? We understand that all of you are quite busy, especially given the fact that you're part of our senior leadership of the JAG Corps. So we truly appreciate y'all taking the time out of your days to be here and to help not only talk with us, but to help educate, entertain, and connect with all of our paralegal podcast viewers. So let's just dive right in. So the first thing I think that it would be great to establish is what made you want to join the Air Force just overall?
So I'll go ahead and start, and I kind of feel like maybe my answer might be similar to the others, but honestly, I was really inspired to join, honestly, because of 9/11. I wanted to serve my country after that tragedy and just do something bigger than myself. That was my biggest reason that I wanted to join.
I'll go next. I joined, I was in college for a couple of years, and I was trying to work about 2 to 3 jobs at the same time, and it just became a lot of work. And a friend of mine joined the Army, and she told me about, maybe I should try and join. And my brother told me to do anything but the Army. So I went and looked at joining the Air Force. And so I decided to go ahead and join. And I was just going to do 4 years, and then here I am. So
I joined out of high school. I remember I was working 2 jobs at the time, 40 hours, but I just didn't feel fulfilled. I remember in 9th grade, my sister and I had plans to come in the Air Force. We had heard about it. We had done, some talking to some recruiters and stuff like that. Needless to say, I joined. She left, stayed behind, did not end up joining. But really it was to fulfill something bigger because I just was not feeling fulfilled in the jobs that I was doing, and felt also, like Senior McWhirter said, to do something bigger than myself was important to me.
For me, I did a little bit of college after high school. Just like the other folks, I wasn't really sure what I really wanted to do. My parents were like, "Hey, you need to make a decision. You know what you want to do with your life." So at 20, I decided to say, "Hey, you know what? I think I'm going to join." I'm a military brat. So my father was in the Army for 20 years, and he was like, "Hey, I think you should join the Air Force." So I came in open general, and I just decided that this was going to be my career path, and I've been enjoying it basically every day.
So, I mean, you can absolutely tell, right? It seems like we've got a smattering of reasons from each and every one of you, but it seems like overall we have that theme of you wanted something bigger than yourselves, and it's like more than yourself, and you had that desire to serve. So that's incredibly admirable, especially I think in today's day and age. I think it's every day I feel like more and more that means something greater.
Thank you, everyone, for sharing. So we'll move on to the next question. What made you want to become a paralegal? And also, if you remember, who conducted your interview?
Okay, so I joined the Air Force, and I honestly, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was in the late enlistment program, and me and my recruiter were going over a number of different jobs and options. And one day he gave me a call, and he's like, "Hey," it was in 2002. He's like, "Hey, paralegal just opened up to people straight out of basic training. This has never happened before. What do you think about being a paralegal?" And the first thing I said to him was, well, okay, well, does that mean I'm going to be a secretary? Because I don't really want to be a secretary. He's like, no, 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 no. It's a really awesome job. You really want to do it. And so he got me really excited about it. But then we found out that you would have to go into basic training open general. I didn't really know what that meant, but he got me so excited about the job that I didn't care. And so I went in open general during basic training. And at the time I didn't realize I could have been like a cook or security forces. So I didn't realize that till I got to basic training. So I got there, I put paralegal first on my list, and I let them know I really wanted to do this. So went through the interview process during basic training. So I don't remember exactly who they were that interviewed me. I know it was a chief and a senior for sure, because I was super intimidated when I walked in the room, because I don't think I had met anybody that high ranking at that point. But they were super laid back. We had a great interview, but again, at the end, I asked them, like, "Hey, I don't want to be a secretary, right? Like, I'm not going to be a secretary." They're like, "Oh, no, no. Have you seen the TV show Jag, which was really popular at the time?" I'm like, "Yeah, I've seen it." And they're like, "Yeah, it's just going to be just like that. And you're going to jump out of airplanes, and it's going to be really cool." So clearly they were messing with me, right? Because we don't really jump out of airplanes. So they got me excited about it. I obviously got the job. And me and Stephanie Hankey were the only two out of our class that were picked to go out of basic training at that time. So that's kind of how I ended up being a paralegal.
Okay, I'll go next. So I'm similar. When I went to meet with a recruiter, I actually wanted to do a medical job. I did not want to be a paralegal. They told me that I had to wait 8 months for a medical job. And I was thinking, if I'm going to join the military, I'm going to do it now. I'm just not going to do it. So my recruiter, I was actually married to a guy that worked at MEPS. And so he said, "Well, hey, paralegal is open." And she said, "Well, no, that's for retrainees only." And he said, "No, it's actually a new thing. We can get our job as a paralegal." And I was like, "Okay, well, how long is the tech school?" And he said 6 weeks. And I was like, "I'm going to do 6 weeks." So I actually got to basic training, and I actually had a guaranteed contract as a paralegal. I did not have open general. So it was an accident. And I think the next class, because I was the first class. So I think maybe the next class may have had a guaranteed contract. I think Ashley Mann also had a guaranteed contract as well. So a couple of us did. So it was myself and I think he's Master Sergeant or Senior Master in Yost. He's in the Guard. He also had a guaranteed contract, but we still went through the interview process, and I do not remember his name, but he is now a civilian at AETCJA who did my interview. And it felt like it was really like 5 minutes long. I barely remember it. I remember writing a 1-page bio. I remember doing a typing test. It was it was like nothing. And I honestly don't feel like I was prepared for what the paralegal career field was going to have in store for me. But he was like, okay, well, if we pick you, we'll let you know. And I was like, if you pick me, I have a guaranteed contract. If you don't pick me, bye. I'm not going to be, I'll just leave. You're telling me this in the middle of basic training. It was the wrong time. And he didn't know that I had a guaranteed contract. So they had to figure that out. And lo and behold, I ended up being a paralegal. So it ended up working out, I would say.
I think so.
Yeah.
Similarly, my experience was somewhat of a blur. I remember going in feeling super intimidated by the interview process. But for me, it started out, I'd originally come in and I had an air traffic control contract. I, for personal reasons, decided I was not going to join the military. And 2 days later, I called my recruiter and I was like, just kidding. I'm really going through with this thing. Like I said, I was young, naive, maybe a little irrational. And brash in some decision making, but ultimately I decided I was going to come in. He put a contract for open, because at that point I had lost the ATC job, and put a contract in open general. He called me shortly after that and said, hey, they've opened up 7 jobs for paralegals to come straight from basic training. Kind of gave me the back history of, before you had to go in and do the 2-week admin course. That's what we call or hear about the pipeliners. So this was new to us, and I actually came in with a contract for paralegal as well, went through the interview process, did the bio. But I was really interested in the job to begin with because my dad used to tell me I was like a master debater, like about everything. So of course he thought, hey, she should be in some kind of law type career field. It was a good fit for me. What I have found along the way is I'm happy I became a paralegal and not a lawyer. So that's my story.
Right. So for me, I was in the delayed entry program in July of 05, and I was just tired. I was like, man, I need to get in the Air Force. So in January, they're like, my crew was like, hey, you can just go in open general. We can kind of figure out what you're gonna do when you get to basic training. I was like, okay, that sounds great. I get to basic training. And then I think about week 3 or 4, they give you like a list of potential jobs that you can do. Paralegal was on there. I was like, wow, paralegal. I had no idea what even a paralegal does. I know how to do something with law. So I chose that job. Luckily, did the interview. I'm not exactly sure who the interview person was, but I know it was a senior master sergeant. And I know they were stationed at Lackland for sure, who did my interview, because I remember them telling me that. I was the element leader at the time, so, I was pretty confident. I was pretty happy. I did pretty good on the interview. Had to do the 1-page bio, did the typing test. I got really, really lucky because my MTI was basically like, hey, you're either going to be security forces or you're going to be services flipping burgers, essentially. So that's what I was told, and I just got super lucky that I ended up becoming a paralegal. So that's my story.
I think it goes to show, and working at the schoolhouse, I hear, similar stories about that. How did people come in, and how did they become a paralegal? And some of them are like, I don't know, it just happened. Here I am. And we'll touch on that later about how now that's not really a thing anymore. It's like used to, it was. Because I can attest to that. I came in open general. I just said, yep, get me a job, get me out of here. And I was prepared for the fact that I could very well be scanning IDs at the gate. And yet, here I am as a non-prior service. And A1C Tejeda, right? Sort of the same story. I mean, what about you, ma'am? It's like, did you choose to be a paralegal?
I did actually. So paralegal I listed 6 different jobs, and my recruiter told me that it was pretty limited and he couldn't guarantee that I'd get one of them. And I actually interviewed for the broadcast position. And then a week after, he let me know that a paralegal slot opened. That was my top job. That's what I really, really wanted. And so luckily I had the guaranteed paralegal position before going to basic. I'm really glad it turned out that way.
now you're jumping into this, so you kind of get best of both worlds.
Yes, I'm trying.
Awesome.
So yeah, I mean, it just goes to show, right? It doesn't matter the background that we come from or how we ended up in this position. It's really about your ambition and your drive and your willingness to work for it. And I think, right, the four of you as the OGs are a testament to that too. It's like everybody came from such a different background, but yet here you are as senior leaders in the JAG Corps, and that was through that hard work and that dedication that wasn't just handed to y'all. So it's definitely a testament to that. So y'all have been in, far longer than both Airman Tejeda and I. I'm not calling y'all old by any means, right? But what I am saying is y'all been in for far longer than we have. And to that effect, what kind of changes have y'all seen affect the Air Force at large over your careers?
So, I really had to think about this one, and I've definitely seen a lot of changes in the Air Force, but two of the biggest areas, and I would say this is definitely more recently, are in the areas of innovation and also talent management. So I think we've been doing a great job as an Air Force in creating a culture that inspires innovation. And I think we've all seen it by the spark cells and the innovation cells just popping up at all the different bases. So I think we've been doing a great job about leveraging ideas and accelerating change. So I think we're headed in the right direction as far as innovation, also as far as talent management. So it kind of started back in 2014 when we started doing the enlisted development teams, where boards would meet to vector our senior NCOs for leadership positions. So, that's been around almost 10 years now. And each year, I think we're really improving the process. Also, in the past few years, hopefully everybody's been on My Vector and now Talent Marketplace. So if you haven't heard, the Enlisted Corps is going to start using Talent Marketplace for all of their assignments. We're kind of easing into it. Next month, we're going to start with our Equal Plus ads, and then eventually Talent Marketplace is going to manage the talent for the Enlisted Corps. So I'm excited, about those changes, and I think again we're just really headed in the right direction with all of that as well.
Okay, I'll go next. I think one of the biggest changes is how we do accessions into the JAG Corps. So, all of us as the OGs have gone through the BMT interview process and everything. And as becoming the Lackland Law Office Superintendent, I got to see that come kind of full circle as I got to actually perform those myself. It was quite interesting seeing how it all worked out, and it was quite honestly very haphazard and how it was actually done. I for one am a proponent of, I'm really glad how it's being done now, because I feel like it's a little more deliberate in how we do it. The way it was done previously is the Chief of Personnel Actions at basic training, he would look at the individuals that were between 3 and 5 weeks in basic training, at those who are open general, or even those that were maybe failed out or couldn't meet certain standards in the other career fields. And they would have them, she would be like, hey, send these people over to this building at 0715 for a mandatory appointment. And she'd send it to this training squadrons. And she would send it to the people that meet like the minimum ASVAB, certain minimum requirements for our career field. And they get there, they do a typing test, they do the 1-page bio, and then she would give them a list like, hey, these are what you qualify for. And if they put paralegal on it, then they move to the interview. So it's kind of like, if all the stars align, you get to have you get to be a part of the paralegal interview. So it was hard, because also it's like, it wasn't just me doing the interviews. We'd have the AATC chief at the time, it was Chief Calhoun. She would also do it as well, and any of the other seniors within JBSA, which there are quite a few, we would all do the interviews together. And so we'd all have to meet up at the same time when all of our schedules aligned. So we would go and we'd meet with these young airmen at early in the morning, in the middle of basic training, and they're just kind of like, thank God I'm not a regular, I'm not being yelled at right now. And so we'll go and we'll talk to them and we'll introduce ourselves. We'll give them an overview of what to expect in the paralegal career field. And normally I would bring one of my non-priors that most recently graduated from PAC, and I would let him or her speak to them and kind of give them the lowdown, the neat and the dirty of what to expect at PAC. And we've had a couple of times, because as you would know at basic training, you would have your wingman come with you because you can't go by yourself. We've actually recruited the wingman rather than the actual airman that came down. So we've actually done that too. But it was very important, especially to me, that, and also to the other seniors that I was with at the time, that we were like, look, if you don't want to be a paralegal, we don't want you to be a paralegal. Because being a paralegal is very difficult, especially as a non-prior, because this may be your job for 20 plus years. It's not an easy job. There are things like vicarious trauma, and there are things that you're going to see and go through that you may be able to say, yeah, it's no big deal. You're in basic training right now. It's no big deal. You could totally go through anything, So we try to make it a point that we were very blunt and honest about what you're going to see and go through. And with that, it's like you can only gauge what you can gauge in like the 30 minutes not even 30 minutes that you're actually spending one-on-one with the individual. You maybe got like 10-15-minute interview with them that you got to speak with them. For me personally, I would kind of look for a person that maybe had a little bit of that kind of went through some stuff growing up, maybe kind of had that built-in resiliency in their history, because you kind of need a little bit of grit, in my opinion, to be a paralegal, kind of have that built-in resiliency. Then you also look for people that speak well. We have them do like a little bit of a reading from the AFI, and then you look at kind of their history. You think about like academically how well they would exceed like their standards in any kind of academic setting, because being a paralegal can be pretty difficult for high school. So we do all that, and all that will happen before lunchtime. And so we'll rack and stack and decide who we think is going to be a paralegal. We sit down amongst each other and then we decide. And we have so many seats that we need to fill for the next PAC class. And if we don't have enough, then we don't have enough. We're just not going to just shove people through because we need to fill seats. We try to be very deliberate about who we want to go through, and not just to throw and fill seats if we need to. So that's kind of how we did it. It was like Senior Garcia, Hoagland, and Todd, and everybody in there. So we were very deliberate in how we did it. I'm not sure how it was before, but that's what we try to do. I do like the new process now. I think SMSgt Seivright will be able.
Yes, ma'am. I'll jump in from here. So, like you said, that old process, how you get to basic training and you do an interview, that's not going to be something that we do anymore. The new process now is, recruits, civilians who want to be paralegals, they're gonna get a guaranteed job, right? So for the Air Force Recruiting Services, we're the office of responsibility for those changes, for those interviews. So basically, how it works is, these interviews and the cycle is going to be based on the PAC schedule, right? So each year, PAC has courses. For fiscal year 2022, there's 5 courses. And the interview schedule is aligned with those classes, essentially. So how it works is, a recruiter will market and try to get people to want to come in as a paralegal, right? Once they identify those folks, they do the application process. They'll do the typing test. They'll do a writing test as well, just to make sure you're a good writer. And then they'll get with us to coordinate to do those interviews based on the schedule of a time they can actually go to PAC, right? So for fiscal year 2022, we interviewed over 100 applicants and selected 68 for those courses, right? And when you're thinking about the manpower and the strength that we actually needed, we only needed 44. So when you look at that, we had over 100 applicants, and we only needed to fill 44 seats, right, based on our manpower and our end strength. So this is a very, very competitive process. Not like how it was before, where you just got lucky, right? Now you have to actually want to become a paralegal, advocate, do that interview with the Air Force Recruiting Service, or it can also be a designated loss, at the closest location of that person as well. But for mainly though, the Air Force Recruiting Service, myself, the law superintendent, does those interviews, and then the SJA pretty much signs off, as well as our career field manager, Chief Haskins. So that's kind of like the process now, making sure you interview these applicants. The best qualified are the folks that are getting selected now. A lot of them are very smart, very talented, have degrees, have experience of being a paralegal even before even coming into our career field. So yeah, like I said, it's a very, very more competitive process, and I like it. I think it really improves us as an Air Force.
All right, I'll jump in. So I appreciate what folks have shared. I mean, obviously, I thought about this question and going back as far as I could in my young Airman Basic and A1C and Senior Airman days, what kind of changes I saw. I think the initial thought was the changes I've seen in the career field. I remember as a young airman, the changes, everything we were doing for court-martial was all drugs. If you think about what we're doing now for court-martial, is all sexual assault cases for the most part. And so I think that is indicative of sort of the Air Force as a whole, how we're handling sex assault cases. I think that we're handling them a lot better than we did. Also, I think as far as culture is concerned, I've seen lots of positive changes and, diversity and inclusion. I think those are some of the biggest hit homes, aside from what the folks have said already, with innovation and things of that nature that I have seen move in a positive direction. The vicarious trauma, I think, is a fantastic asset that we added on a few years ago that I think is important, because being a paralegal is hard. And, a lot of people are surprised when I talk about the number of mental health issues we have in our career field. And as you're talking about the interview process, that's something that's important from a superintendent level when you're talking to folks, and even for the career field, how we're assessing folks who have some predisposition of some problems, maybe that might be indicators that this would be a challenging field for them. But I think we're handling it a lot better. I think we're talking about it. We didn't talk about it when I was a senior airman, I can promise you that. So, I try to be an advocate now to talk about it and kind of debunk some of the myths out there. It's hard. It's taxing on folks, and we need to be sensitive to that. And it's not just, the paralegal career field. It's across the Air Force we're talking about it. So
yeah, and then to follow up on that as well, I kind of wanted to go back and actually answer the Air Force question. What I've seen as well, just looking back on feedback, I think that's been a big change over the years. Before the Airman Comprehensive Assessment, I don't even remember, really my supervisor really getting to know me, right? Until that changed, right? Once that changed, and you're really talking about your goals, you're really, talking to each other, and they're really getting to know you. I felt that changed a lot of my experience in the Air Force from when I first got in, right? I really didn't feel like we got that. And I love that we're transitioning into the airman leadership qualities now. We're even improving that process as well. So those are major changes that's been happening, in the Air Force, and that's going to continue to happen as we grow as a force. Even when we're out, hopefully they can keep improving those ways where you can get to know your supervisor and your supervisor can get to know you. So I think those are some of the big changes that I've seen over the years.
Yeah, it's really interesting to hear how it's changed from many years ago to recently. I really like what you shared about when you're interviewing at BMT, really looking at the personality traits that some folks have and how that aligns with the career field. Because I think a lot of us going in don't really know what to expect, right? For some, it just sounds very interesting or like a important job to have, but also really acknowledging the weight that comes with that. And sometimes having a heavy load, right? A lot to do, being under quite a bit of pressure sometimes. And also just seeing who was doing the interviews before, right? You said it was someone in personnel, I believe, Senior Larsen, and then switching over to paralegals who come from the field and have that experience. I think that's definitely key in this.
Yes, I think it's, I think my biggest thing is like making sure that you can manage people's expectations. That's my biggest thing. I'm a big advocate for is, making sure people understand what to expect. And as a paralegal, like people do have that, like, oh, it's gonna be like the show Jag, and it's gonna be like, they really truly think that, like, it's crazy. And like people really don't understand what you're gonna see as a paralegal. And even as a young airman, I wasn't married. I didn't have children. I could easily read, not easily, but I could read a sex assault case or a child sex assault case, and it wouldn't hit me as hard until like after I was married and I had children. Like things will hit you differently in your lifetime and in different, milestones in your life. So I think my biggest thing and my biggest way to do effective change to the people after me is to ensure that they are ready and their expectations are managed as they go up through their careers, and that they're not going to be like, oh, I never knew that this was what it was going to be like. I don't want that for them, because that can be irrevocable damage to them and their own mental health. And that's not what I want for them, because I'm not going to lie, like I was not ready. And there was my mental health it was weighing throughout my career. And I wish that we had talked about it sooner. And that's why things have changed as I have gotten more wise in my paralegal days. And I'm a huge advocate for mental health for paralegals and making sure that they're taken care of and my people are taken care of and that we talk about it. So kind of my thing.
Yeah, and I really appreciate that you shared that, because there's a balance between, I think, in our career field, being really thorough and detailed with our work, but also for me being a much newer paralegal, feeling like the people that I work with care about me beyond my role as a paralegal, right? How am I? How are things at home? How's my family doing? And I think that's been fundamental in moments where I feel like I'm getting spread too thin, and I felt comfortable to express that, right? Or sitting in on an interview, like, hey, that was a little heavy. And it sounds like that's something that's happened over time. Like it wasn't always like this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And something that I could say, right, just from the curriculum perspective, it's like we're definitely acknowledging, and as a result of what y'all have seen and suggested, and the mental health providers that we have consulted with, the professionals to help shape the way that we drive the paralegal field, even on the curriculum side now, we talk about vicarious trauma during PAC and during PCC, because we want our initial accessions, our retrainees, and then those individuals who are going to be NCOICs to recognize that it's very much so a real thing. And it's like when you're fighting to ensure that justice and that process plays out, the way that justice wants it to, it can be very heavy. So yes, it's like that's one of those things that y'all were helping pave the way for, and now you're seeing that pay dividends in the fact that I think we take it serious now. So that's an awesome thing. It really is.
Absolutely. And our next question was going to ask about major changes in the JAG Corps, but I feel like you all touched some on that, unless you had something else to share. But we will move on to the next question. And this may be somewhat of a loaded question, but what is your biggest professional regret?
So I wouldn't say I have a lot of regrets. I've thoroughly enjoyed my career, but if I had to pick one thing, I would say it would be not doing a DSD. As a staff sergeant, I really wanted to be a recruiter. My loss quickly talked me out of that and geared me in the direction of JS. Now, I love JS. It was one of my favorite jobs. I actually am finishing my IT degree because of my experience there. And then later on in my career, I also wanted to be a career advisor, and I actually kind of talked myself out of that as well, because I wanted to stay in the career field and make positive changes in the career field. But the reason I regret it is because I see a lot of these paralegals that go out of the career field and do DSDs, and they come back with so much leadership knowledge and skills and just things that we don't always get within this career field. So if I had to pick one thing, that would be it.
I would echo that from the rooftops. I would say that, so when I first came in, I tried to, quite honestly, immediately retrain. But at that time, I was when they said they could deny, first time airman, they could easily deny you the retrain. Because, like I said, manager expectations, it was not what I expected. But that's okay. I'm still going to do my best at what I got to do. I think, the only thing I've kind of done differently from being a paralegal is being a DP, which is one of my absolute all-time favorite jobs, which is so surprising that nobody else wants to be a DP. It's an amazing job. Plug for DPs. But I think, I tried to be a TI twice. I tried to be first sergeant multiple times. And I just don't know if I just didn't advocate correctly or with the right people. Those things just didn't pan out for me. And I think it's different for paralegals who are non-priors, because if you don't get to do something outside the career field, all you ever get to know is being a paralegal. And then you see people that get out to do other things and come back, and it's like you're refreshed, you learn, and you see such new perspectives. And so I constantly talk with my friends who are paralegals that are like PIs, and I mentor them too, and I see them and I review their EPRs, and I'm like, man, that is legit. Like the stuff they get to do and the people they get to like put their hands and touch on, like it's like you get to see them be like the tip of the sword. Like it's just amazing the things they get to do. And I just feel like I'm just so out of touch with some of the things that they get to do. And I'm just so super jealous, and it's just, I just wish I had that chance to get to do those things and been able to get to do something different. But I still did, like, I was always additional duty for sergeant. I worked with the career assistance advisor to teach classes. I still did those things and put myself out there, even though I didn't get to officially do those jobs. So never let those things deter you because you didn't get the chance to actually be them. Still go out there and do those things as much as you can. But I will tell you, advocate for yourself to do those DSDs and even DP, even SVP, even those outside the box JA jobs. Try to make a difference in those jobs as well.
So I'll just piggyback off of what those ladies were talking about. So I was very fortunate. I did not think it was going to happen to me. I stepped away at about my 9.5-year mark of being a paralegal, where I was getting pretty burnt out. So it was, in fact, one of the best things I could have done for my career was to step away and go teach Airman Leadership School. I walked out thinking I was a good leader. I went to Airman Leadership School. I was like, man, I suck. I had so much to learn. So I do feel like there is a lot to be said and a lot of benefit for our career field when we do allow folks to step out and do some of those duties, because I do feel like it helped me tremendously to grow as a leader, to understand more big Air Force than I, was really I was very narrowly focused on 5J. And so that really kind of helped to expand my knowledge about the ways of the Air Force. And but when you ask the question about my biggest professional regret, I can think of a number of situations I absolutely bombed, when it came to a leadership, right or wrong. I struggle with saying I regret those because I do feel like I probably learned my biggest lessons in my failures, to be honest with you. And so I have tried to achieve a failing forward a kind of approach. And basically, when I say I fail forward, everybody's going to fail. It's going to happen. It's what you do after the failure that defines who you are. Did you learn from it? Do you do it better the next time? So I have a hard time saying I actually regret those because I do think that they developed me in the long run. I would say probably I can officially say I regret not seeking mental health earlier in my career. I did not get medicated. I'm going to go real personal, okay? Because I think it is part of debunking the stigmatism of seeking help. I should have gone sooner. I do regret not going sooner because I do think it affects the people that you work around if you're not in your best mental health state. So that's probably my biggest regret.
Awesome. No, that's all really great as well. And I definitely believe, I think doing a DSD job is definitely something I wish I would have did as well. I'm getting a lot of great experience being in the Air Force recruiting world. So I kind of feel like I'm outside our career field a little bit, just seeing what these recruiters doing, going to their annuals, doing their events. So I'm kind of gaining some of that great experience. So even doing a job that I'm doing now, would be, great for someone coming up who wants to see another side of the Air Force as well. But me personally, one of my biggest regrets is, the JAG Corps and just the Air Force as a whole is getting, way more educated, right? School is a big thing. And I wish earlier in my career, I would have took school a little bit more seriously and already had like my degree and maybe pursuing a master's degree now or whatever that is. It's not too late. Right? Obviously, I'm doing those things, but I do wish younger in my career I really, actually did those things because, I think education is a big thing and we're really transitioning to that. Even to make the next ranks, right? To make that senior, to make that chief, education is a big deal. And I wish professionally I would have did that a little bit earlier.
Yeah, thank you all so much for sharing. I think you all shared really important points and really being transparent about, what essentially what you would have told your younger self, right? I think that's always an important thing to think about for me as I'm like moving through and navigating like the military as a whole. And this field is like, what would if I did this before, right? What would I have done different? Yeah, but thank you, Sergeant Crow.
So yeah, I think a lot of people can relate to that. It's like those individuals who have been in a long time and they want to do the DSD and sometimes, right, the manning just doesn't support that. So I think the sentiment is definitely there. I sort of feel, I feel blessed that I'm at the schoolhouse because it's sort of like a pseudo DSD. It's like it's not outside the career field, but it's still something different than the day to day. So it's like I feel very blessed that I've had the opportunity to be there, and yeah, it's one of those things just between everybody's, sharing those regrets, those professional regrets. I think the biggest thing, as Senior Jones said, it's like fail forward. We all know we're going to fail. It's going to happen. It's baked into our DNA. It's literally impossible not to. And that ability to fail forward is always going to propel you into that, hopefully that next success. So really, Lee, just sort of coming around about what type of improvements would you like to see in the JAG Corps? Because we've already talked about what kind of changes we've seen in the Air Force, and a lot of those tied into the JAG Corps. Knowing what y'all know now and looking at the current state, where do you hope to see it? Not in just a year, a couple of years, but also, when A1C Tejeda is senior Master Sergeant Tejeda, right? That kind of legacy that y'all are going to leave that's going to be affecting her and where she's going to pick up and run with that torch.
So for me, there's a couple improvements that I would like to see and hopefully get after in the next couple years. So one being leadership development in the JAG Corps, innovation in the JAG Corps, and also connection and inclusion. So I really hope that we can improve our focus on leadership development in the JAG Corps for our attorneys and our paralegals. I think we do an amazing job of building these technical experts. We're doing a great job at that. I can't even see that much improvement on that side, but I do see some improvement that we could use on the leadership side of the house. So, some ideas for that would be just infusing leadership training into the schoolhouse at every level, whether it be GSOC, PAC, PCC, and just making sure that we're filling that leadership piece I think we've been doing a good job lately thinking outside of the box with the digital badging initiative. That initiative has fused some of our technical skills as well as some of our soft skills, such as emotional intelligence. So some things that I think we could work on. Also, as far as innovation, I think we've been more open-minded the past couple years in the JAG Corps on innovation. Maybe that's because of COVID. I'm not sure. JAI has taken a bigger role as far as being able to leverage some of our ideas. We have the Paralegal Modernization Strategic Team that's also coming up with some initiatives. But I'm just really hoping that we can come up with a really good, solid, sustainable program for innovation for the future of our JAG Corps. And finally, connection, inclusion, and collaboration. So again, maybe because of COVID, we've been doing a better job as far as connecting and collaborating. We now have the Paralegal Facebook page. We have the Paralegal Teams page. I'm constantly on there looking at the interaction, and I have never seen that throughout my time in the JAG Corps. So we're improving on that piece, and then also, Chief Haskins has started her Paralegal Connect strategic team, which hopefully everybody has heard about, and their first initiative is doing the paralegal reunion at Wright Pat in October. So hopefully everybody, thinks about attending that. So those are some ways that we're starting to get after it, but I think we really just need to focus on as far as connection, just like you were saying, just showing people that we care and just really showing people that we are truly a JAG Corps family, so we can foster an environment of trust and just make our JAG Corps a better place overall.
Well, I'm on my way out the door, so I can be a little bit blunt and honest. So if I might hurt some feelings, so be it. So so I honestly think the paralegal part of the JAG Corps, we're trying and we're working and we're trying to get there when it comes to transparency and honesty and stuff like that, and work-life balance. I think we're trying. I think, we're trying to get there, but it's not translating across to our O side. And I think that we're just going to be spinning our wheels if we're trying to do work-life balance and our O side doesn't. And I know y'all understand what I'm saying, and you're picking up what I'm putting down. So if we're sitting here trying to do everything we can to have some kind of balance in our lives, but our SJAs and our attorneys are there till dark 30, I feel like it's been the same thing my entire career, that we're just going to get burned out. And then it's just never going to change. It's never going to change. And that's why our paralegals are burned out. And then we're just going to continue to leverage more and more things on our people. And there are less hours in the day, but you're expecting them to do more. And then our mental health and everything else just keeps getting worse and worse. That honestly, that's why I'm tired. I'm tired, guys. I'm tired. I can't do this anymore. I am tired. And I know other paralegals are tired. And I just don't see it getting any better. So unless you guys, I hope you guys are out there going to make it better. I really hope you guys are out there going to make it better. And I hope you guys are out there going to tell those O's they need to make it better. Because if you paralegals are going to keep spinning your wheels and not telling those JAGs to make it better, it's not going to get any better. So those are my last words on that.
You delivered a sermon right there. You were preaching. So that was.
I'm like, those are like my retirement speech.
No, it's power.
It's true. It's absolutely true. You paralegals deserve so much more than what you are getting, and y'all work so hard and deserve so much more.
Well, it's powerful words, right? Because I think all of you have seen it, and I know our viewers have seen it. If the SJA is there, then the deputy's there. Well, if the deputy's there, the CMJ is there. Well, if the CMJ is there, the NCOIC is there. And if the NCOIC is there, oftentimes you have a couple of other paralegals hanging around, and a lot of times that's where that burnout starts happening, is at that like NCOIC level, and then it starts burning down from there, because the NCOICs a lot of times try to shelter the best they can, where it's like, all right, you know what, Airman so and so, go. They're like, what? I've got work to go right now. Leave the building, and it'll be here tomorrow. It's like, I'll take care of something hot if it comes up, and so I think you're right, and it's something that the JAG Corps, we just have to decide what's important. We know the justice train will never stop rolling. The justice train always keeps rolling.
And what's difficult right now is like now the civil law train is up because you have religious accommodations, and that train is through the roof right now. So now we're burning at both ends, justice ends and civil law ends. So it's like, where are we going to take a knee? Where are we going to take a knee and let our folks rest and have a moment? Where can we just say it's okay to let it wait till tomorrow? Like, because it's always going to be there. Like, and that's where it comes from, the SJAs and the deputies and the losses. Like, at what point? Because it's always going to be there, but somebody has to say something. I don't know.
So,
what you want to say?
well, I was going to say, hey, look, that's hard, but I'm going to come up with something different. I echo, what you ladies have already shared. There's a lot of truth and a lot of work that needs to be had in those areas. I think the JAG Corps faces some similar issues that Big Air Force is talking about. So cliche if it might be, but inclusiveness is part of it. I think we can do some work there. Bureaucracy is a part of that too. There's a lot of that I think we can also work to improve that essentially improves the environment that we work into. So those would be my two things to kind of add on to the big points that the ladies have already made, which are excellent points.
I honestly believe we're making a lot of great improvement, especially with the paralegal development plan. I think it's good, but I think that itself probably needs some improvement for me personally. Because you'll get your form back, and you'll see all these different comments, and you'll see your record is on track, and then you'll have another chief or board member saying, hey, you need to improve in these areas. So it can get a little confusing when you're looking back at your records and trying to figure out, hey, either A, how can I get to my next step? More mentoring, I guess, more development beyond just the form. I think maybe needed to say how board one day, how did they get to a vector? Stuff like that's what I think needs to be a little bit more improved. And that just deals with that NAF, paralegal manager, and that NAF paralegal manager getting with the loss of a wing or whatever, right? To get that airman there, knowing they're going to be, going through a paralegal development plan where, they're going to be up for a vector one day. So I think there needs to be a little bit more mentoring as far as that goes, as far as the improvement side for that. And definitely officer, I think, more mentorship as far as development. We see a lot of things about paralegals, how you develop. I do think our officers need to develop too, especially their leadership skills. I know they go to SOS and they do different things as well, but I would love to see some plans for them as well, how to get them better leaders as well.
Yeah, I think that's right. All of you have had some incredibly constructive thoughts about what we want to see for the future of the JAG Corps and how we're going to get there. And I think, it's just going to take a little bit of work, from each and every one of us, and that wisdom that y'all are able to impart. How are we, right, as the next generation of the JAG Corps, Emmett Tejeda, myself, and those individuals sort of in our rank range, right? It's like, how is the new guard going to pick up where the old guard left off? And I think as long as we continue to have leaders who are forward leaning and who aren't stuck in the past, who are resistant to change, I think we can make the JAG Corps and the Air Force overall a better place. What about you, Aaron Tejeda? What do you think about the changes and the initiatives, especially with your perspective as it's like being relatively new?
Yeah. Um, well, I'm kind of trying to take notes while I'm listening, and just because I think it's all really interesting because I don't have, right, past experience to see changes, right, being newer. But hearing this, it's really motivating to try and change some of the things I'm doing now, because sometimes I tend to be the person that's like, well, I want to finish all my work today. And something that's been, and I've had, right, my NCOIC tell me, like, hey, you have to go. Um, or, it's late, that this is tomorrow's work. And I think something that I've come to terms with, and sometimes it's difficult to be okay with, is that there isn't a sense of completion, right? It's more so, this is tomorrow's work. Like, does this have to be done today? So really just listening to what each and every one of you shared is really just these pieces of advice to take with me, right? And to have conversations beyond this, right? I hope that people who also listen to this are able to take these pieces of advice and start conversations where we work, right? Because we can feel this type of way about different aspects of our work, but if we're not talking about it more, right? And talking about, well, how do we move forward? How do we do this different, so we're not feeling, right, for example, burnt out, and having more balance. That's really essential, I think, for like in the long run, our overall well-being, right?
I think you summed it up perfectly, right? So it's just definitely things to think about. And in that vein, I think you've given our audience, our paralegal OGs, y'all have given our audience something to think about, especially our brand new airmen. And I hope that they watch this and that they take note and they listen and they think about what do they want to see one day when they're filling y'all's shoes, when they're the senior leaders of the JAG Corps. And y'all have absolutely just knocked it out of the park in terms of giving us something to think about, to chew on, and to really try to lay that path forward. So I definitely want to thank y'all again for taking the time out of your days. I know all of you are exceedingly busy with just a number of things. So again, thank you all so much for taking the time to talk with us and to really just share some of that wisdom. We absolutely greatly appreciate it.
It's been an honor. Thank you.
Great job. This is very, very, very well done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and with that, it's we want to thank our audience too for taking the time out of your day to watch this, and hopefully using it to improve the JAG Corps that you belong to. And it's not just that you belong to it; it's your JAG Corps, and it's your future. So go ahead and speak up, right? Let your voice be heard in the right way, and make the change that you want to see. So I'll leave you all on that. Think about that. And until next time, we will see you